It's just a presentation on adding and subtracting rational expressions by Mathematically Marcia. Adding and subtracting rational numbers is just like adding and subtracting basic fractions. You have to have a common denominator. In this example, we already have a common denominator of x, so we can add the numerators. 3 plus 7 is 10, and then we keep the denominator x. And then we do need to include excluded values. Since we have a variable in the denominator, we say x cannot equal 0. Okay, this next example, we already have a common denominator again. Now remember, inverse rules, subtracting is the same as adding the negative. So in the numerator, we have 5 minus x. We can't actually subtract them because they're not like terms, and we don't know what x equals. And then we keep our denominator in the bottom, x plus 1. Now, if you're one of those that likes to have the variable first, you could rewrite this x negative x plus 5 over x plus 1. Either answer would be correct. We do need to find our excluded value though. X plus 1 cannot equal 0. So you subtract 1. X cannot equal negative 1. So whichever format you choose, make sure you include the excluded value. Okay, these fractions do not have a common denominator, so we need to find our least common multiple. So look at each variable that's included in the monomials, and they both have x's. That one has 2, so we need 2 in our denominator to make sure we have enough. And then we have a y over here that also needs to be included. So my common denominator is x squared y. That's when I need to change both of these two. Now look at this first fraction and see what's missing from its denominator and the common denominator. It has an x, but it doesn't have an x squared, so we need to multiply it by another x to make that x squared. And since the denominator needs to be multiplied by x, I need to do the numerator as well. So my new numerator is 3x. In the second fraction, my denominator is missing a y. So I need to multiply that numerator by y. Now that we have common denominator, we're ready to add. We can't actually add 3x and 4y because they're not like terms. So we just put 3x plus 4y over x squared y. And we do have some variables in the denominator, so we need to do our excluded values. X squared cannot equal 0, y cannot equal 0. And the square root of x squared is just x cannot equal 0. So 3x plus 4y over x squared y, and then x cannot equal 0, y cannot equal 0. Okay, in this example, we do not have common denominators. We also need to remember that the fraction bar x is a grouping symbol. So x plus 1 is a group, and x minus 2 is a group. So for our common denominator, we need both groups. We need the x plus 1, we need the x minus 2. Okay, now look at this first fraction, see what the denominator is missing from the common denominator. It's missing an x minus 2. So we also need to multiply this numerator by x minus 2. So we have 3 times x minus 2. Then in the second fraction, our denominator is missing the x plus 1. So we have to multiply the numerator by x plus 1. All right, now that we have a common denominator, we can add our numerator together. 3 x minus 2 plus 5 x plus 1 over x plus 1 x minus 2. Now we do need to simplify our numerator. We can start by distributing to eliminate the parentheses. That'll give you 3x minus 6 plus 5x plus 5 for x plus 1, x minus 2. And then we have like terms here that can be combined. See the 3x and the 5x, and then the negative 6 and the 5. So let's combine those. 3x plus 5x is 8x. Negative 6 plus 5 is negative 1 over x plus 1, x minus 2. Okay, and that's all we can do for adding the fraction. Now we just need to find our excluded values. You have x plus 1 cannot equal 0, and x minus 2 cannot equal 0. So x cannot equal negative 1, x cannot equal 2. Okay, before we can find our common denominator on this one, we need to get it in factored form. So let's start by factoring our first denominator, x squared plus x minus 6. A times c is negative 6. Signs are different. Larger number is positive. Negative 1 times 6. Negative 2 times 3. That's the one that gives me b, which is 1x. So we're leaving the numerator alone right now. We have x minus 2 and x plus 3. And then in the second fraction, a times c is 15. Everything's positive, so 1 times 15. 3 times 5 is the one that gives me 8. So x plus 3, x plus 5. And then we leave our numerator there. Okay, now we can look for our common denominator. So basically every group that appears anywhere in the denominator needs to be included in the common denominator. So we have an x minus 2, we have an x plus 3, we have an x plus 3 again, but it's in a different fraction, so you don't need to include it twice, and then an x plus 5. And then, of course, it's a common denominator, so it's the same thing over here. Now, let's look at each fraction and see what's missing from that denominator. We have in the first fraction the x minus 2, the x plus 3. We don't have x plus 5. So we need to multiply our numerator by x plus 5. And let's go ahead and distribute that. Save ourselves a step later. So 5x plus 25. Then in the second fraction, we don't have an x minus 2 in the denominator. So we need to multiply this numerator by x minus 2. So 9x minus 18 after we distribute. Okay, now we're ready to add our numerators. So 5x plus 25 plus 9x minus 18 all over x minus 2, x plus 3, and x plus 5. Okay, now I do have like terms to combine. 5x plus 9x is 14x, and 25 minus 18 is 7. And then, of course, I still keep my common denominator. And usually it's okay to just leave your denominator in factored form. You don't need to go back and multiply. We do, however, need to go find our excluded values. And you can use your common denominator to do this. So x minus 2 cannot equal 0. X plus 3 cannot equal 0. And x plus 5 cannot equal 0. So when we add 2, we get x cannot equal 2. Subtract 3, x cannot equal negative 3. Subtract 5, x cannot equal negative 5. So x cannot equal negative 5, negative 3, or 2. Okay, let's get our denominators in factored form so we can see what the common one is. Looking at the first fraction, x squared minus 6x plus 8. C is 8. It's positive, so all of the signs are same as B, which is negative. So negative 1 times negative 8 does not add to 6. Negative 2 times negative 4 does add to 6. So we have x minus 2, x plus, minus 4. And of course we'll leave our numerator as it is for now. And then the second fraction, C is 12. Again, B is negative, so everything's negative. So negative 1 times negative 12, negative 2 times negative 6, negative 3 times negative 4. So x minus 3, x minus 4. Okay, now we need a common denominator. So every group that we have in a denominator needs to be included. So we have an x minus 2, an x minus 4 in the first fraction. Next fraction we have an x minus 3. We have an x minus 4 again, but we don't have to include it again. So x minus 2, x minus 4, and x minus 3. Now our first denominator, we are missing an x minus 3. And we need to remember that this is a group. And in the second group, I'm missing an x minus 2, or the second fraction. So we have here x minus 1, x minus 3. Over here we have x minus 3, x minus 2. Okay, now we need to FOIL the denominators. First, outer, inner, last. So let's come over here and look at that x minus 1, x minus 3. The first would be x squared, outer minus 3x, inner minus x, and the last plus 3. And then combine x squared minus 4x plus 3. So in the first fraction we had x squared minus 4x plus 3. Okay, now we'll look at that second numerator. You have x minus 3 and x minus 2. So the first would be x squared, outer minus 2x, inner minus 3x, and last plus 6. So x squared minus 5x plus 6. And I'm going to go ahead and combine these into one fraction. Now the new denominator, we don't have to multiply that. We can leave that x minus 2, x minus 4, and x minus 3. Okay, now to finish adding, we just need to go back and combine our like terms. We have x squared plus x squared, which is 2x squared. And then negative 4x plus negative 5x is negative 9x. And 3 plus 6 is 9. Then, of course, we have our common denominator. Now, you might be able to reduce this, so it's a good idea when you have a trinomial like that to check it and see if maybe it can be factored. Most of the time you won't be able to factor it, but every once in a while you can. So let's check it and make sure. A times C, 2 times 9 is 18. It's positive, but B is negative, so all of our signs are negative. Negative 1 times negative 18. Negative 2 times negative 9. Negative 3 times negative 6. And that actually works, gives us negative 9. So 2x minus 3, 2x minus 6. We can reduce this by 2. So 2x minus 3 and x minus 3. So we have on our numerator now 2x minus 3, x minus 3. Our denominator was x minus 2, x minus 4, x minus 3. So we can actually cross these off. We wouldn't have seen that had we not factored. So our final answer is actually 2x minus 3. I don't need the parentheses anymore since a fraction bar groups them. And then x minus 2, x minus 4. Now I just need to go back and find our excluded values. Remember, you have to look at all the denominator before you cross stuff out. All of that has to be considered. So x minus 2 cannot equal 0. X minus 4 cannot equal 0. And x minus 3 cannot equal 0. So on the first one we add 2. So x cannot equal 2. Then we add 4. X cannot equal 4. And we add 3. So x cannot equal 3. So x cannot equal 2, 3, or 4. Okay, since this is a subtraction problem, let's go ahead and change this to plus a negative. That way when we're taking our numerator, we go ahead and get all of our signs correct. Okay, now let's factor our denominators so we can find our common denominator. X squared minus x minus 6. A times c is negative 6. Signs are different since it's negative, and the larger number is negative 1, like B. So 1 times negative 6, 2 times negative 3. And that's the one that gives me negative 1. So we have x plus 2 and x minus 3. And then we'll leave the numerator alone. And then plus negative x, leave that numerator alone. For the next one, we have x squared plus x minus 12. So a times c is negative 12. Signs are different again, but this time b is positive. So the larger number is positive. Negative 1 times 12. Negative 2 times 6. Negative 3 times 4 is the one we want. So x minus 3 and x plus 4. Okay, now we're ready to look for our common denominator. So we know we need from the first fraction an x plus 2 and an x minus 3. And then the second fraction we have another x minus 3. And then we also have an x plus 4. So my common denominator is x plus 2, x minus 3, x plus 4. So now we need to change the numerators accordingly. The first fraction, the denominator is missing x plus 4. So we need an x plus 4 in the numerator. Don't forget to group the x minus 6. And let's go ahead and FOIL that. The first would be x squared outer minus 6x inner plus 4x, and the last minus 24. Combine those to get negative 2x. So x squared minus 2x minus 24. Okay, then the next group, the denominator is missing an x plus 2. So up here we just need to distribute the negative x. So negative x squared minus 2x. Okay, now we're ready to add our numerators together. Okay, so for the first fraction we have x squared minus 22x minus 24. Then we have minus x squared minus 2x. And then of course we keep our common denominator. Now just look for your like terms to combine. X squared minus x squared, those are opposites, so those cancel. Negative 2x minus 2x is minus 4x, and then a minus 24. Okay, now let's factor this numerator, see if there's anything we can cancel. And we factor by finding the common factor of negative 4. And then that gives me x plus 6. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is x. Negative 24 divided by negative 4 is 6. And that does not give me anything that I can cancel. So that's my final answer. It's as simplified as I can get it. We do need to find our excluded values to go with it though. So look at your common denominator. You have x plus 2 cannot equal 0. X minus 3 cannot equal 0, and x plus 4 cannot equal 0. So x cannot equal negative 2, subtract 2. Add 3, x cannot equal 3. Subtract 4, x cannot equal negative 4. So x cannot equal negative 4, negative 2, or 3. Okay, we have another subtraction here, so let's remember this is actually plus a negative. Notice I grouped it because that whole group needs to be negative. Doing that in the beginning will help you avoid mistakes with your signs later on in the problem. Okay, now we want to look for our factor, our denominators, so that we can find the common denominator. So the first group, 3x squared minus 7x plus 2, a times c is 6, and it's positive. So all of the signs are negative, just like b. So negative 1 times negative 6, that works. That gives me negative 7. But don't forget about the 3 in front of x squared. So 3x minus 1 and 3x minus 6. Then we divide both of these by 3. So 3x minus 1 and x minus 2. Okay, now let's look at our second fraction. 6x squared plus 7x minus 3. Now a times c is negative 18. And b is positive again, or positive now, so the larger number is positive. So negative 1 times 18 does not equal 7. Negative 2 times 9 does add to 7. And don't forget about the 6 in front of x squared. So 6x minus 2 and 6x plus 9. So this group can be divided by 2, and this group can be divided by 3. So 3x minus 1 and 2x plus 3. All right, and then our numerators, we're just leaving alone for now. If they could be factored, you would not want to factor your numerators. Leave them in expanded form. Okay, now we are ready to look for our common denominator. So in the first fraction, we have a 3x minus 1 and x minus 2. And then in the next group, we have a 3x minus 1 again, but we don't need to repeat. And then we have a 2x plus 3. So that would be my common denominator. So now let's see what's missing so that we know what to multiply the numerator by. The first group, we have the 3x minus 1, we have the x minus 2. We don't have 2x plus 3. So let's go ahead and distribute that to x squared plus 3x. Then in the second group, we have the 3x minus 1, we have the 2x plus 3. We don't have x minus 2. So x minus 2, x plus 2 is actually a difference of squares. So that would be x squared minus 4. But there's a negative in front of it to distribute. So it's actually negative x squared plus 4. Okay, now we're ready to put our numerators together. So you have 2x squared plus 3x minus x squared plus 4 all over 3x minus 1, x minus 2, and 2x plus 3. Then combine our like terms. 2x squared minus x squared is x squared plus 3x plus 4 all over 3x minus 1, x minus 2, 2x plus 3. Okay, and check to see if your numerator can be factored. Here a times c is 4. You get 1 times 4, 2 times 2. Neither of those add to equal 3. So since that can't be factored, there's nothing else we can do to simplify this fraction. We do, however, need to find our excluded value still. So look at your common denominator. So you have 3x minus 1 cannot equal 0. X minus 2 cannot equal 0. And 2x plus 3 cannot equal 0. So here you add 1. So 3x cannot equal 1. And then divide by 3. So you get 1/3. Here we add 2. So x cannot equal 2. Subtract 3. 2x cannot equal negative 3. And then divide by 2. So x cannot equal negative 3/2, 1/3, or 2. If you thought this video was helpful, please hit the like button below. I look forward to reading your comments, questions, thoughts, or requests for future videos. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to my channel below. Thank you for watching.